Socialism and communism are political ideologies that promise equality and prosperity for all. They envision a world without poverty or exploitation, where resources are shared and everyone benefits. At the heart of these ideologies lies the idea of collective ownership, where the means of production are controlled by the state or the community as a whole, rather than by private individuals. This, in theory, is meant to prevent the accumulation of wealth in the hands of a few and ensure a fairer distribution of resources. However, the reality of socialism and communism has consistently fallen short of this utopian vision. Despite the good intentions that often motivate their proponents, these ideologies suffer from fundamental flaws that have led to disastrous consequences wherever they have been implemented. From the Soviet Union to China, from Cuba to Venezuela, the history of socialism and communism is littered with examples of economic collapse, political repression, and widespread human suffering. The allure of these ideologies lies in their promise of a more just and equitable society. They appeal to our innate sense of fairness and our desire to create a world where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. However, as we will see, the pursuit of these ideals through socialist and communist policies has often led to the very opposite of what they intended. Instead of equality, they have brought about widespread poverty and scarcity. Instead of liberation, they have resulted in tyranny and oppression. And instead of progress, they have stifled innovation and economic growth. The history of socialism and communism is inextricably linked with violence, oppression, and the suppression of individual rights. From the very beginning, these ideologies have relied on coercion and force to achieve their goals. The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, for instance, ushered in an era of terror and brutality that claimed the lives of millions. Similarly, the communist regimes in China, Cambodia, and North Korea were responsible for some of the most horrific atrocities of the 20th century. These regimes, built on the idea of absolute state control, systematically eliminated any form of dissent or opposition. Individuals who dared to criticize the government or challenge the ruling ideology were silenced, imprisoned, or executed. The very notion of individual rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, was deemed incompatible with the collective good and ruthlessly suppressed. The human cost of these ideologies is staggering. Millions perished in gulags and labor camps, victims of forced collectivization, political purges, and deliberate starvation. The regimes that espoused these ideologies transformed their countries into giant prisons where fear and suspicion were the norm, and any semblance of individual freedom was extinguished. The blood-stained banner of socialism and communism stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of utopian ideologies that prioritize the collective over the individual. Proponents of socialism often point to the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, as examples of successful socialist societies. They argue that these countries have achieved high levels of social welfare, economic equality, and overall well-being, while maintaining democratic institutions. However, this narrative is a misleading simplification that ignores the fundamental differences between these countries and those that have embraced full-fledged socialism. The Scandinavian countries are not socialist in the traditional sense. They are mixed economies with free markets, private property rights, and a strong entrepreneurial culture. While they do have a generous social safety net, it is funded by high taxes and a robust private sector. Their success is not due to socialist policies, but rather to a combination of factors, including a strong work ethic, a culture of consensus building, and a commitment to free market principles. Moreover, it is important to note that the Scandinavian model of social democracy is facing its own set of challenges. High taxes, while necessary to fund the welfare state, can discourage investment and entrepreneurship. The generous social benefits, while well-intentioned, can create disincentives to work and lead to dependency. And the bureaucratic nature of these systems can stifle innovation and economic growth. The fundamental flaw of socialism and communism lies in their disregard for individual liberty. By concentrating power in the hands of the state and suppressing individual initiative, these ideologies create systems that are inherently inefficient, unsustainable, and ultimately inhumane. They stifle innovation, discourage hard work, and erode the human spirit. In contrast, capitalist democracies, while far from perfect, recognize the importance of individual freedom and the power of the free market. They allow individuals to pursue their own self-interest, which in turn benefits society as a whole. By protecting private property rights, encouraging entrepreneurship, and rewarding hard work, capitalist democracies create the conditions for economic growth, innovation, and prosperity. The choice between socialism and capitalism is not just an economic one, it is a moral one. It is a choice between a system that seeks to control and a system that seeks to empower. It is a choice between a system that values conformity and a system that celebrates individuality. And it is a choice between a system that has repeatedly led to tyranny and oppression and a system that, despite its flaws, offers the best hope for human freedom and flourishing.
Introduction. How this book came to fruition. The social media circus of socialism and communism. Introduction. In the age of social media, where opinions fly faster than light and debates can spark at the click of a button, one topic that seems to ignite passionate discussions is socialism. Every day, countless individuals take to platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to extol the virtues of socialism, sometimes even communism. It's almost as if these ideologies have gained a second wind in the 21st century. However, when I dive into conversations with these proponents, I'm met with a striking reality. There isn't a single successful example of socialism or communism anywhere on earth that stands up to scrutiny. The purpose of this book is to unravel how these discussions often unfold, why they lead to heated exchanges, what I like to call bomb throwing, and ultimately culminate in a book that serves as a reminder not to repeat history's mistakes. The social media landscape. Picture this. You scroll through your feed and see post after post praising socialism as the savior for modern societal woes. It's easy for someone new to the conversation to get swept up in this wave of admiration, without fully understanding what socialism or communism entails. However, when I engage these individuals in dialogue, it quickly becomes apparent that many don't grasp the historical implications or outcomes of these ideologies. The first thing I often ask is for examples of successful socialist or communist states. More times than not, Scandinavia pops up as the shining beacon of socialist success. But here's where things get interesting. Scandinavia isn't socialist. Sure, countries like Sweden and Norway have robust social welfare systems and high taxes, but they operate within a capitalist framework, one that promotes free markets alongside social safety nets. It's more akin to social democracy than pure socialism. The bomb throwing begins. Once I've dismantled their Scandinavian argument, which can feel like taking candy from a baby, opponents usually pivot toward vehement criticisms of capitalism itself. They launch into tirades about wealth inequality and corporate greed, points that do have merit but are often oversimplified. My response? Okay then, show me a successful communist or socialist example. This question usually leads them into an uncomfortable silence because, let's face it, there are no shining examples. Instead, they start hurling insults my way. This is what I refer to as bomb throwing. As they unleash their vitriol about my supposed ignorance or lack of compassion, the usual suspects, I respond by citing historical failures associated with their beloved ideologies. For every insult thrown my way, be it capitalist pig or out-of-touch elitist, I've got an extensive list ready, from the Soviet Union's catastrophic famines under Stalin's rule to Venezuela's current economic collapse despite its oil wealth being mismanaged under Chavez's promises of equality. A cycle without end. What becomes evident during these exchanges is that rather than engaging in constructive dialogue about real-world implications and history lessons learned from past mistakes, many prefer retreating into emotional outbursts rather than acknowledging inconvenient truths about their cherished ideologies. As conversations devolve further into personal attacks, often fueled by frustration, I find myself compiling more evidence against socialism, communism's track record. This back and forth becomes less about winning an argument and more about documenting how history has repeatedly shown us what happens when idealistic dreams are put above practical realities. Conclusion: a call for reflection. By the time our discussion wraps up or spirals out of control, I've managed to gather enough material and personal anecdotes to piece together what would become this book. It serves not only as an exploration of failed ideologies, but also as a cautionary tale for those enamored with utopian dreams devoid of practical grounding. In conclusion, social media may amplify voices calling for socialism and communism daily. However, it's crucial we pause and reflect on history before embracing such paths again. With over 100 million silenced voices from those who suffered under oppressive regimes speaking out from beyond the grave, starved or murdered in pursuit of unattainable ideals, it becomes our responsibility not just to listen,